Welcome to the Big Blue Breakdown as we examine the Giants' 28-3 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles at MetLife Stadium. It drops the Giants to 2-5 on the season and 0-3 in the NFC East. I'm Paul Dottino. Thanks for joining us. So, the Giants are now 4-18 against their NFC East rival Eagles since the 2014 season. This was one of those typical games where Philadelphia really dominated for 4 quarters. Now, don't get me wrong, the Giants tried to put up a fight in the first half when it was only 14-3 Philly, but you got the sense during those first 2 quarters of the game that things were really tipping strongly in the Eagles' direction, and it was going to take some type of Herculean effort and monumental play to turn things around. Well, in fact, the Giants may have had one late in the second quarter, and I look at this as the turning point in the game and really the Giants' last gasp in trying to salvage this one. They were down 14-0 with 1:41 to go. And following a Dexter Lawrence sack that forced the Eagles to punt the ball away, the Giants took over first down from their own 41. And they were able to convert 2 third-down opportunities during the drive and got it all the way down to the Eagles' 10-yard line. And on 3rd and 4, the Giants get a touchdown pass to Theo Johnson over the middle from Daniel Jones. But Johnson gets called for offensive pass interference because at the end of his route before he came back, there was physical contact and a shove. That play resulted in the Giants having to move backwards. 3rd and 14 from the Philly 20. And with only a few seconds, 9 seconds left in the game, they decided to line up for a Greg Joseph field goal to get some points. Joseph hits from 38 yards, and it's a 14-3 Eagles lead at halftime as they go into the locker room. Speaking to Giants offensive and defensive players after the game, many of them thought that that was a very critical drive because, A, they were looking for points, but settling for 3 there really turned out to be a punch in the stomach. They needed the 7 to try to gain some momentum going into the locker room. They came out in the 3rd quarter, and even though they stopped the Eagles on a 3-and-out, the Giants offense then goes 3-and-out. And to make matters worse, the Eagles follow up with a 10-play, 77-yard drive, capped off by Jalen Hurts going in from the 1-yard line on a touchdown that makes it 21-3. And for all practical purposes, the Giants were never in the game after that Philadelphia scoring drive. So we go back to the penalty that took the Johnson touchdown off the board as the one potential linchpin that the Giants might have had to stay in this game in the second half. But as it turned out, it was not to be. Now remember, in the first half, the Giants had held Philadelphia to 157 yards of total offense, 9 first downs, and it was only 14-3. 14-3 at that point. It was still somewhat manageable. But again, not to be. All right, let's go over a few of the totals before we get to our game balls and gassers. A few of the critical totals that on the whole describe for you how difficult the day was for the Giants. 119 yards of total offense, only 10 first downs. 7 of them came in the first half. So you see how things continue to snowball and get worse as the day went on. The Giants were 3 of 14 on third down conversions. Their longest play from scrimmage was 14 yards. They gave up 8 sacks. They were charged with 3 fumbles, had the ball for only 24 minutes, and only penetrated Philadelphia territory 3 times on the day. One of them was the possession I just spoke of, and it resulted in a 3-point field goal. The Giants were sacked on 5 of their first 6 possessions of the game. I mean, they just could not get any traction at all. And as you know, early in the fourth quarter, Drew Lock replaced Daniel Jones at the helm for what reasons that Coach Brian Daboll described was just to get a spark. Jones does remain the starting quarterback moving forward. Now, defensively, even though the Giants were still competitive at halftime because of the defense, and I want to give you a couple numbers here. For the game, they held Philadelphia to 1 for 13 on third down opportunities. That is incredible. They also registered 5 sacks. Another terrific number. And for the day, they wound up with 7 quarterback hits. So, in some regards, yes, the defense did enough to keep them in the game for a half. But ultimately, this is the first time this season that the Giants' defense allowed more than 21 points in a game. Remember opening day against Minnesota when the Vikings scored 28 points, Van Ginkel had a pick 6. And so 7 of those points were charged to the Giants offense. So this is the first time the Giants D gave up more than 21 on a given game. Totals that you don't like if you're defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Saquon Barkley, 17 carries for 176 yards and a touchdown, including big play runs of 55, 41, and 38 yards. The Eagles ran for 269 yards on the day. And of course, it was the 2 big plays in the first half that allowed Philadelphia to take that 14-3 lead. On the Eagles' first possession of the second quarter, from their own 27, Barkley scampers for 55 yards. That wound up setting up his 3-yard touchdown run that made it 7-0 midway through the period. On the Eagles' next possession, 4th and 3 at the Giants 41, and Jalen Hurts hits A.J. Brown for a 41-yard touchdown pass on a left go route down the sideline, perfectly thrown ball over Nick McLeod for the touchdown, and that makes it 14-0. So a big play on 2 consecutive Eagles scoring drives, and it's 14-0. But again, the Giants, in the final 2 minutes of the first half, actually had a chance to make it a 1-score game and failed to do so. And again, I don't mean to harp on it, but that was the one point in the game where you thought the Giants might have been able to set themselves up for a chance in the second half. It was not to be. We will come back after this quick timeout with our game balls and gassers for the New York Giants in this 28-3 defeat against the Philadelphia Eagles at MetLife Stadium.
Football is back and it's here to stay until February. And over 1 million fans across 33 states got into the game last year by making picks on Underdog. Win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on your favorite players' stats, such as touchdowns, passing yards, and more. The Underdog app is easy to use, and making an entry takes seconds. It's safe, secure, and straightforward, and signing up is even easier. Just head on over to Underdog's simple-to-use mobile app or UnderdogFantasy.com. Sign up with the promo code NYSI, and Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code NYSI, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. Must be 18 and over, 19 and over in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 and over in Colorado for some games, 21 and over in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
Paul Dottino with you, back on the Big Blue Breakdown, the Game Balls and Gassers edition for the Giants' 28-3 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, we go through the game balls first, and on offense, honestly, folks, you would need a microscope to find a game ball on offense for the Giants after this one. Daniel Jones's efficiency numbers in terms of 14 of 21 through the air, well, that doesn't sound bad at all, right? Now, if you ran for 250 yards in the game, for example, Jalen Hurts was 10 of 14 for 114 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean, okay, you can get away with that kind of passing line if you ran for over 250 yards in the game. That didn't happen for the Giants. So Daniel Jones, 14 of 21, 99 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Drew Lock comes in and goes 3 of 8 for 6 yards. He was sacked once. Jones was sacked 7 times. Nothing either quarterback did provided any production for the Giants. Running wise, and they got no running game going at all. In fact, 76 yards on the ground, 18 carries, and you say, okay, well, oh, fine, maybe that's over 4 yards a carry. Well, Drew Lock had a 13-yard scramble. Tyrone Tracy, the rookie, 6 carries for 23 yards. Daniel Jones, 5 for 20. Singletary, 5 for 18. I mean, they just got nothing going at all. And we already mentioned the sacks. So how do you give any game balls out to anyone on this offense? Leading receiver was Wan'Dale Robinson, 6 catches for 23 yards on 9 targets. Even Malik Neighbors, only 4 receptions for 41 yards on 8 targets. There's really no point in going through the offense any further. No game balls for the Giants on offense this week. Now on defense, I mean, again, the players said as a whole, nothing was good enough. Head coach Brian Daboll said nothing was good enough all around. But I'm going to go to Dexter Lawrence once again. 5 tackles and 2 sacks in the game. And, you know, he just is so difficult for offenses to deal with. He truly is a headache player at the nose tackle position. He had 2 sacks in the first half that actually stalled third down opportunities for Philadelphia and forced them to punt and got the ball back to the Giants offense. Again, this game on the scoreboard was competitive in the first half. It may not have looked like that very much, but ultimately, the defense, by holding Philadelphia to 14 first half points, actually gave the team somewhat of a chance to stay in the game. So Dexter Lawrence, once again, gets my game ball on defense. Now, I do want to mention a few other players who I thought, really put their bodies on the line and tried to do what they could to help keep the defense afloat as the snowball just started rolling down the hill. I thought that Brian Burns continued to make some plays in this game, and we know he's playing on a very sore groin. He can't play all the snaps, but for example, there was a stretch during this game, second possession in the first quarter, where he tipped the ball, charging into the backfield on second down, and then following a full start, he came up with a third down sack and forced the Eagles to punt, just single-handedly short-circuiting their second possession of the ball game. That's the kind of stuff that we're seeing out of Brian Burns, raising above the fray to do everything he can to make a play and to try to spark the defense. Tamon Fox, limited action in this game, raised from the practice squad as a game day activation. Came up with a sack and I believe a couple of quarterback hits. Indeed, he did. 3 tackles. That's a nice stat line for the young player. Again, coming up off the practice squad for the game. Drew Phillips continues to play physical and gaining more and more experience in the slot. And I still think the sky's the limit for him. Azeez Ojulari, again, getting more playing time and coming up with a decent stat line. So these are guys who kind of deserve honorable mention for trying to do what they could to keep the game somewhat reasonable. Ojulari had 3 tackles and a sack. Nacho Nunes Roches, 6 tackles, including 1 for a loss. And again, Tyler Nubin leading the team with 9 total tackles. So I mentioned some of those guys as honorable mentions because, again, this defense actually had the game within arm's length at halftime before things just basically just get out of control because offensively the Giants could not do anything at all to gain traction. I look at special teams. Punter Matt Hawk, 11 punts, averaged 47 yards on the day, had a net of 42.9. It almost reminds me of the days of Giants Stadium back when it opened in the late 70s, and people talked about Dave Jennings, the many-time All-Pro punter, who they used to talk about him being the Giants offense. Well, Hawk did a real good job on his punts yesterday, including first-half punts of 58 and 64 yards that flipped the field when the Giants offense could not get anything going. And he was able to at least put the Eagles deep in their own territory and force them to try to work out of it as they, wound up building a 14-3 halftime lead. But Hawk was a part of giving the defense some good field position that they could work with to try to keep this game somewhat manageable. So we go to Matt Hawk as the special teams game ball. Gassers, we're just going to go across the board here. Offense, defense, and special teams. The Giants did not perform well at all during the Minnesota opener. And I still chalk that up to what we see around the league, is that opening day games, the quality of football is not very good, and a lot of teams just don't have it. They've got to find their rhythm. They got to get the spark plug going and get the ignition on the regular season. So I still look at that Minnesota game as an aberration. And following that game, the Giants played very competitive football until yesterday, when ultimately the Philadelphia Eagles, as they have done so many times in the last decade, wound up running wild and turning it into a miserable afternoon for the New York Giants. Now, we're going to be back with a live edition of the Big Blue Breakdown to take your video calls, your audio calls, and your chats. But we won't be here on Wednesday night. We will be here instead on Thursday night because the Giants are playing on Monday Night Football next week in Pittsburgh against the Steeler team that, well, they were rolling against the Jets. Russell Wilson was inserted at quarterback and did a fine job in taking care of gangrene. So it'll be the Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers next Monday night on Monday Night Football in Pittsburgh. So we will move Big Blue Breakdown live to Thursday night at 7:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, to discuss all things New York Giants as they prepare to take on the Steelers. That'll do it for this edition of the Big Blue Breakdown. I'm Paul Dottino, and we will see you next time.